We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. I'd like to welcome everyone in the audience tonight. If you would please stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance with us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Greg, would you please read the school board norms for us tonight?
Sure. The board developed norms are to share and respect varied opinions and to speak with a united voice once a decision has been reached, to prudently prioritize resources in a student-centric manner that aligns with the district's strategic plan, to exhibit a mindset of continuous improvement through adequate preparations for meetings and a commitment to board education, to commit to assessing board effectiveness to ensure high-quality governance for the staff, students, and community of Jamestown.
Thank you. We have nothing under public communication. Are there any conflicts of interest to declare? Can I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Greg. Second by Bob. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on into our regular meeting, we have nothing under recognition or correspondence, so we'll move into reports. Right now, we don't have anyone from the student council, but if somebody comes in a little late, we'll come back to that. So then let's go ahead and move into negotiation seminar review. Bob, could you give us a little synopsis, please?
Sure. Okay, Dr. Leck, Mrs. Schmidt, Mr. Hout, and myself attended, and there was that afternoon or that day there was several mini sessions that we went to. Centered a lot on preparing for negotiations. We had different presenters from school board members to an attorney, but expressed the importance of preparing for negotiations. Senator Shabley was there to talk about funding. He's on the Senate Education Committee, or is it appropriate education? Okay, talked about possibilities there. A lot of discussion on impasse, and a lot of the discussion on impasse centered around Jamestown and Fargo, unfortunately, but it was some good discussions. Dean Rummel was there and presented, took part in a panel with Mrs. Schmidt and Dr. Leck. And then there was quite a discussion on options for health insurance and different, and not just the traditional health insurance, but some different ways to look at it. So all in all, it was a good day. So if there's any questions.
Any questions for Bob? Thank you for that. So we'll move on into number 3, the 2018-19 Superintendent's Annual Report. Dr. Leck.
So you have the document in front of you. I just draw your attention, and those in the audience or watching online or maybe just perusing our website that could find that this is really the synopsis of a lot of the work that we do throughout the course of the year. It's a pretty comprehensive document, but it gives us a look from everything from activities to assessments. And I encourage people to take a look at it. Like I said, it gives a great snapshot of what we do as a district. Give all of the credit to those that gathered this work. I know Amy, Michelle, Sally put a lot of work into this document to make sure that it gets published, and they do a wonderful job. But I think like I said, I think it's a very useful document for people to look at and take that snapshot of what we do as a district.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments for Dr. Leck regarding the report? Okay. With that, then Heidi?
I was going to add an additional comment if people are watching on TV or online. If you're new to Jamestown or new to our district, or considering schools, this I think does give a nice overview of everything that is actually offered in our schools, and I enjoy looking through it. So thank you.
It definitely does put it all in one package. All right. Anything else? Moving on then to the superintendent's report. Dr. Leck.
So you have my written report, just to touch on a few items. The superintendent evaluation, again, that's just the timeline updated to present time that I've suggested to make sure that you complete that by the March 15th deadline. I wanted to give you an update on Central Valley Health. In the past, we have entered an agreement annually with Central Valley. They have in the past provided 2 different positions for us, the school nurse and the health careers instructor at CTC. I've been having conversations with Miss Isler, Robin Isler out at Central Valley for a couple of years, talking about the health careers instructor position. And through some discussions with Robin, at this point, they would like to move forward with that agreement, only having the school nurse in it. I think that is fine. That position does not necessarily have to be a nurse. That position wouldn't need to be contracted through Central Valley. That is something that we could still do. We have a great partnership with Central Valley. We'll continue to have a great partnership, and I think it's just one of those situations that's started for whatever reason. That was before my time here. It's run its course. We've already had some internal discussions about making sure that position gets posted and that we hire a person that can fulfill that position. I thought Mrs. Fisher did a fantastic job. If you've had a chance to visit with her, she has a great passion for health careers, has done a wonderful job in passing along that passion to our students, has done a wonderful job with Skills USA, and we've felt fortunate that we've had her. And we'll, like a lot of positions, we have turnover from time to time, and we'll seek out the best possible candidate to make sure that we have that an option. So, the bottom line is thank you to Central Valley Health for having this available to us for so many years, and we want to continue to have health careers as an option for our students. So that really won't change, although the person in front of the classroom will change. But we are very much appreciative of Central Valley, and it's a great partnership, and we appreciate it. Speaking of transitioning, you'll note later on in your agenda, Shelley Mack has issued a resignation at the end of this school year. And Shelley's another person that has a great passion for what she does. I mentioned this previously, and I think I mentioned it in my report too. We've been very fortunate that Shelley's had that food service management experience, but she's also served as the dietitian for our district, kind of serving 2 roles, and we've been really fortunate, and Shelley's done a great job, and we certainly are sad to see her go, but like Central Valley Health in that position, we'll put that out as soon as that resignation is approved, and we'll look forward to finding the best candidate to fulfill that position. And so that's something that once that resignation is approved, we'll move forward with, but want to thank Shelley for years of service and dedication to food service. I was fortunate enough to attend the National Conference on Education. That is the AASA, the superintendent's professional organization. I've been fortunate. I've been on the governing board, I think as the board is aware, for the last 5 years, which means AASA or NDASA pay for that, for me to attend. So that isn't something that the district has had to cover. I feel fortunate about that. But I think really the primary benefit beyond getting that opportunity to support state, national level education initiatives is that opportunity to advocate in Washington when we go there every summer, but also then to do that at no cost to the district, which I think is a benefit. And so I appreciate the board's willingness to allow me to go serve in this capacity, but also serve our profession. A lot of the sessions had to deal, at least those that I attended, had to deal with 2 primary topics, and that's social and emotional learning and student safety. And so we were talking hardening of schools, the softening of schools, but also the SEL side of things. And I'll look forward to preparing. So I just got back, so I'll look forward to preparing something in a future board report on some of the areas that I looked into. But that is really my key focus was social emotional learning and student and facility safety. I included in here that I recently approved through our policy a non-curricular club for archery. So that actually allows for a number of opportunities for students from elementary all the way up to high school to participate in archery. It is a non-curricular club, so they follow guidelines. They use for eligibility, for example, they are allowed to use the Blue Jays team name and logo when they participate. They have a little bit of a different rate in terms of facility rental when they look at that because they're a club. I just think it's important that we remember as we go through, whenever we approve a non-curricular club or a curricular club, that we set these up as a no cost to the district opportunity for students. Over time, sometimes these evolve into activities, and if that is what we're looking for as a district, that's great. Then it could become an activity. But that isn't part of the process. It might be something it evolves into, but it isn't step one in a 5-step process to become an activity that has an advisor paid for and that. So it is separate from. Figure skating is a similar activity in a non-curricular to archery. And one of the things Dr. Larson and I were talking about earlier is getting a breakdown of non-curricular and curricular clubs and just sharing that with you so you can get some context to that. But just wanted to share that is available. We'll be acting on facility needs later. One of the things that I wanted to draw your attention to, that this would be a preliminary list, because we're having recommending a boiler project, we want to be able to get that bid process started. And so, of course, I do want to reach out still to principals and make sure that we get individual needs considered, although I will say what we're projecting is already beyond what we are receiving in revenue. So anything added to this would have to reach a pretty serious need before we would be able to afford to move forward. But just wanted to make you aware that is preliminary facility needs for summer projects. So I'd stand for questions if you have any.
Any questions for Dr. Leck? I am thankful that Central Valley is still able to contract with us with the school nursing, because not all districts even have that, a school nurse in their school. So I'm thankful that their budget did allow them to continue offering that. Okay. Moving on in our agenda to board education, we have guests with us this evening that will be presenting to us on contextual competency PLC's essential question number 2. Mrs. Brandy Euland and Mrs. Natalie Schrader. Welcome.
Nope, I don't think so.
Okay, so I'm Brandy Euland, and I promise I will not make you listen to me talk all night tonight, because I really don't have a voice. But just wanted to come in and talk a little bit about question number 2, which is, question number 1 is, like you had last time, what do we want all students to know and be able to do? And then question 2 is, how do we know if they know it? So that's what we're going to talk about tonight, is that common formative assessment and common summative assessment. But I just wanted to let you guys know, too, that question 1 at the middle school and the high school looks a little bit different than it does at the elementary, just because we're more departmentalized. So where we talk about these common formative assessments and common summative assessments, not all of our departments are there yet. For example, science and social studies just had their standards updated in February, and so they're really working hard through question number 1 right now, and so it might take them a little bit longer to get to question 2, 3, and 4. So with that, I'll let Natalie take over.
So I'm kind of going to guide you through the handouts that we gave you. So we thought this was a good visual, and this was actually, we got this from our PLC training that we went to just a couple weeks ago from Michael Maffoni. So if you look from left to right, it's kind of a continuum. We have classroom assessments, common assessments, district level assessments, and then external assessments. And you can see as you move more toward the right, they become more summative. And then you can see on what basis, so daily, weekly, unit, and then all the way to annual. But what we thought might be kind of confusing is what types of assessments go where. So if you flip to the next page, we listed just some examples underneath each column. So classroom assessments, those would be more assessments like on a day-to-day basis. So I teach a lesson and then I have an exit slip before kids leave. So then I can look through that exit slip and see if are they getting it or are they not getting it. That's very formative. That just informs me, do I need to reteach or can I move on tomorrow? Then we have common assessments, which we do in the middle school. We do that with content areas. So my cohort and I have common assessments. So that just helps ensure whether the student is an alpha or a beta, they're getting the same content, maybe not necessarily the same delivery, but it's the same assessment. So those would be like unit or chapter tests, final projects, things like that. And then at the district level, the Fast Bridge Learning, and then the STAR, Renaissance STAR assessment, that's what we use district-wide to measure growth. We also put semester and final exams because that is kind of something we've decided as a district that we would do by semester. And then our external assessments being the North Dakota State Assessment. So again, we just thought some examples would kind of support the visual on the front. Any questions about these 2 pages? Okay. Then the next page is, this is actually a standard from my classroom. So SL is Speaking and Listening 7.1. If you read the standard, it's a very comprehensive standard. So a lot of times we talk about unwrapping or unwrapping standards so that they make sense to us, so that they make sense to students. Because if I told my 7th graders, we're going to engage effectively in a range of collaborative discussions, that's not going to make a lot of sense to them. So breaking it down, I broke it down into A, B, and C. And then if you look more at the rubric, we try to grade on the 3 so that we're kind of meeting, that's the standard, would be the 3. But then we're also kind of showing advanced students where they can work toward. So that's just one standard, but it can be graded in a number, or it's a big standard, so there's a lot of different ways to look at it. Then what we did again with our PLC training is we were to come with some results. So if you flip to the last page with the colors, I collected, this is just from one class period, so the numbers down the side, those are students. And then across the top, those are just those 3s that I have on the rubric. And then I broke it down, I just put in where I rated kids with 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s. And then that helps me as a teacher, okay, under preparation, I have 2 areas that I need to improve, and then under collaboration, 2 areas. Would I say all teachers are doing this? Probably not. It's developing. Like Brandy said, English and math, we've had our standards, so we've had some time to unwrap, and now we can kind of get into looking more at our results more specifically, whereas some content areas are still unwrapping. So, any questions?
Well, thank you so much for coming to us. Bob?
You talked about common assessments. You're at the middle school, right?
Yes.
So
Yep.
you and your partner have developed common assessments.
Yep.
What are we doing with common assessments at the elementary level so that from school to school, the vertical articulation is, I don't want to say easier to measure, but it's important?
Yeah, good question.
So one of the things that they did last year was they unpacked those standards and broke them down into the learning targets. And then this year, they're working on those common formative assessments as a grade level. So for example, I'm just going to use grade 3. They really dug into the everyday math series and pulled out what those different focus skills, what the standards were, and then decided, what's a good test question, how many do we need, and then they can form those together. Right now, it's a little bit building by building, but they are coming together to kind of decide what it's going to look like as a grade-wide system. Mm-hmm.
Other questions? Greg?
And looking at this tool, how has it really helped in educating the kids? I mean, how has it worked in your classroom? What are some of the ahas that you've found in some of this?
For me personally, I guess, as a teacher, there's a lot of things that you just do by experiencing it, by being in the classroom. Sometimes, like for example, I might feel like, oh, these discussions would have been better if the kids were prepared. Then I can just go and make that change. Whereas maybe where they're scoring low in collaboration, that might not be something that I just necessarily feel. Now I have evidence that shows it. I know it as a teacher. It's more noticeable to the teacher, I guess, where our actual needs are rather than just feeling one way or the other. So it's evidence-based.
Just to kind of add on that, that's where you can pull some of those small groups and do some reteaching too. So it's not just based on that teacher perception piece anymore. So you're not reteaching the entire class because you feel like they didn't make that standard. You're just pulling those kiddos that really need it.
Any other questions?
Maybe just a comment.
Okay. Dr. Luck?
Can maybe just either one of you maybe just share a little bit about the importance of the Wednesday late start and how much of this work happens during that time?
Sure. So like I said, a lot of the content areas, they're just digging into the standards. But just having that time, so my cohort and I, we meet on Tuesdays, and Tuesdays is where it's more like, we need copies of this, let's plan next week. It's more planning, whereas the PLC time gives you more time to actually go back and look at something and plan for reteaching. Those are all things that we try to do, we strive to do, we make time during that, during our common prep, but sometimes things, because of time, you got to keep moving. So some of those things get pushed by the wayside. So now we have that time, it's built in. So at the middle school, we're still trying to use Tuesday as our planning. Well, Tuesday, I guess, is English, but that's not for everybody. So you still have that planning period, but then the PLC time is where you're digging into your standards and looking at your evidence. So it's just a different use of time, I guess, which we've really appreciated because, like I said, the kids come the next day. You have to have something ready, and this, before it was it was planning and going and going and going, and then that PLC time has just given us time to look at things like this and to actually sit down and unwrap and unpack and have those discussions with our colleagues. So it's been very useful.
Very good. Anything else? All right. Well, thank you so much for coming and talking about number 2 with us. We do appreciate that.
Thanks.
Moving on in our agenda to E, Strategic Plan Goal Review, Social Emotional Learning. Dr. Leck?
Thank you. You have the memo that I put together here, just kind of outlining Strategic Initiative 3, specifically Goal Area 2, which was social emotional learning. And if you remember, that is the Jamestown Public School District recognizes that a successful education embeds the ability to understand and manage emotions, set and achieve positive goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain positive relationships, and make responsible decisions. So if that's our goal, we need to understand what we're currently doing. So what's our current reality, the steps that we have taken already and are continuing to take, and then the next steps, the places we still yet need to go. So just I've given you kind of an outline of what happens at every level. If you look at the K through 5, we utilize and we have, if you remember, I think 5 years ago, we wrote a grant to implement Nurtured Heart. And that's a relationship-focused methodology that we use, again, at the elementary level. Beyond Nurtured Heart, and this then happens really across the district, we use what's called zones of regulation. That's a process used to help students recognize appropriate, inappropriate behaviors and then help them develop positive decision-making skills. So beyond that, at the K through 5 level, we've just started this year to implement a pilot for Second Step. That's a curriculum, a research-based social emotional learning curriculum. That happens at the elementary level. So there will be every building at the elementary level is represented in this pilot, and every grade level. So if you look into, say, Washington Elementary, there will be a teacher implementing second step there, and you'll also have a grade level partner somewhere. Just somebody to help you implement, help you gain a little insight into the program. So at every level, there's going to be a grade level partner and then somebody in your building that can help to support. So we're just looking to start with this, and then hopefully the very small pilot we started at Roosevelt has been very successful. And so that's why we wanted to move a little bit faster with implementing this across the elementary. That was funded through Title IV, which is a federal program. As I've talked about before, we know that we don't have a school resource officer in place right now. That's just been shortage at the city level. And so we're trying to maximize the use of those dollars in Title IV. And rather than just carrying them over, we felt we could move a little bit faster with second step. So that's where we're at there. Our middle school and high school have adopted 7 mindsets. That supports a growth mindset in our students. Beyond that, the high school also implemented, and this was grant funded through Sources of Strength, and that is building capacity to support mental and behavioral well-being in our students at that level. So that was grant funded, Sources of Strength, and 7 Mindsets was utilizing when we originally implemented, was also using Title IV, and I think some grant funding too. So really, we've been able to do, those that we're currently utilizing it at no general fund cost. That's been federal dollars or grant funded. Beyond that, we created a committee of educators. We've talked before about MTSS. We know our multi-tiered system of supports, and that is on the academic side. And there's also MTSSB, and similar to the academic side, that's targeting what expected behaviors are and helping students that are not quite there yet. And so what interventions do we have in place, and how do we provide those supports and pathways for all of our students? And so this group's been working for a period of time, and at some point in the near future, I'll have them provide board education on where they are at in those pathways. I think it's great work. It's something that's supported at the state level. We've had some state training, or those folks on the committee have had some state level training, and I think they're doing great work. It is a process for those that haven't been involved in creating pathways, MTSS pathways. It's quite a bit of work, and so they've done a great job so far. And like I said, I look forward to that, providing some board education of that in the near future. Beyond that, what we're doing, one of the areas, and I brought this up in the past, but we've, our needs to provide additional behavioral health supports is not new. It's not unique to Jamestown. That is something that every district is grappling with, how to provide a better supports for students that need additional behavioral health supports. So that's something that we are one of many experiencing that upward trend in those needs. So in the past, very recent past, we partnered with University of Jamestown, again, a great partnership, something that we're fortunate to have, to provide some internship hours for their counseling programs. But one of the things that we did find out is this is great, but it's short term. It's just like student teaching, and those internship hours aren't guaranteed, but the students' needs are. We do have those needs, and they're regular. So that's a great support, but it can't be what we do on its own. There needs to be more than that. We still want to consider something on the 2020-2021 school year. I really believe that one of 2 options is going to be a good one for us, and either that's partnering with the Medallis Clinic, if that works, and billing out through Medicaid, or it's working through the village or some other entity that provides us behavioral health counseling 2 to 3 days a week. 3 days a week would be optimum, because that would give us something at every level. We would be able to, just for example, say it's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Tuesdays could focus on our neediest elementary students that are eligible for support and whose families desire that support. Wednesdays, you could be in the middle school. In the high school, you could be on Thursdays. So just as an example, I think 3 days a week would be great. That the going rate for that is about $12,000 a day. So there's a hefty price tag to that, and we're just trying to continue to look at different ways we can provide that support. Maybe that's grant funding. I know there's a STOP grant out there that might be an option for that at some point. And we may just have, Title IV is an option for us to utilize those funds, but they only go so far. And it always depends on what the federal appropriation is for federal programming. And we might just have to commit general fund dollars to it. I will say that this is an area that we need to have better supports for our kids in these. And we can talk about antecedents and all of those things that we can't control, but they don't do any good to just talk about the things you can't control. What we do know is we have kids for 175 student contact days. And while they're here, we need to provide some level of support. If we have expectations for change there, we really need to start thinking about how we're going to provide it. Otherwise, you're just admiring the problem. And I think we've admired the problem long enough. It's probably time to start looking proactively at how we can move that bar. So the last part of next steps that I wanted to just talk about is, as the board is aware, through our strategic planning process, we set up a professional development committee that one of the roles they have in this includes administrators, teaching staff, support staff, and auditing the learning needs that we have. So a survey's been developed, and that will go out to staff to determine what needs they have, and we build professional learning opportunities around, we assess those needs and then create professional learning around those needs. I can't promise it, I can almost promise that areas in social emotional learning will certainly be something that staff has a great interest in. It's something we hear about pretty frequently, but that's how we're going to move forward with professional learning. So things that we've targeted already in our strategic plan, but also what exists that from our staff's perspective, support staff and teaching staff, what they need to continue to support students. So that's where we are in strategic planning, and stand for questions.
Is the plan to be for second step to slowly replace Nurtured Heart, or will there be both programs?
It's a good question, and I maybe didn't clearly identify. Nurtured Heart is more about school culture and climate, so a supportive environment, how you interact with students, what that culture of that building is. Second step is more of a curriculum around social emotional learning. So it supports the work. I think they work synergistically together.
And then the next question is, I noticed like the high school, middle and high school then have the 7 mindsets. Do those then gel well together with what they're trying to do?
With what, just a quick question with second step?
Right, are the two programs, like you said, synergistic to each other?
Yes and no. I think that second step has been developed for the elementary level. That's what it exists for. When you look at 7 mindsets, that's more around developing a growth mindset. How do you persevere? How do you gain resiliency? That was noticed at the middle level and at the high school as gapped as areas that our students needed to develop better. And so one of the areas at the elementary level is a little bit more focused on that social emotional learning piece. And so it's like I said, it's kind of yes and no. Yes, they're fitting along the same idea. It's certainly packaged in a different way. One is focused at the elementary, and there is 7 mindsets for the elementary level. Ultimately, we decided second step was a better fit for what we need there.
Sure, thank you.
Bob?
I was at a meeting earlier, and we had 2 representatives from drug court, from juvenile offices, and Jennifer was there too. And they were talking about a great program. I'm sure you're familiar with it, Doctor, but it would, if we could have a report here from the social worker at the high school, because I believe she's our rep on the drug court. and just to talk to the board and the public about how the district is working to help kids. It's not exactly what you're talking about here, but it fits well on how we're working with the juvenile court system to help kids that have different issues and to get them through, and it has had some successes.
So thank you for making that differentiation. You know, when we talk, unfortunately, we talk about mental health a lot, and we think it assumes a lot of things, or it does assume a lot of things. Really, the language we need to use is behavioral health, because that includes the growth mindset. It includes the behavioral expectations, but it also gets into addictions, and those are realities, and the impact that addictions have, across the family unit, and drug court's a piece of that. From the addiction, if you look at the continuum of care, that happens all the way from education to recovery, and a holistic approach. If you really want to think about social emotional learning, has to consider that whole gamut of education all the way through recovery, and drug court is a piece of that. And so we've already put that down as a potential board education. I think it's a very good one, and probably not one we've revisited probably for a couple of years, that it would be good to bring it back.
Any other questions or comments for Dr. Leck regarding social emotional learning? Heidi?
Early on, we talked about the Title IV dollars and the school resource officer. I think our school resource officer provides part of the education with our social emotional learning. And I know the city has been working on some different options. How are we coming along in that process? And is there a point where we consider a plan B with that?
Conversations are continuing. I think everybody wishes they had a clear answer. It's been a good partnership between the city of Jamestown and the school district, and I know that they want to provide it. I know Officer Staska wants to. He feels a draw to the SRO position, and it's very valued from the Jamestown Police Department and the school district. So I know it's someplace we're going to get back to, but and right now we still have services provided. We just call direct. We have to make a call like everybody else instead of having that resource available right there. But I know it's something that they're still striving for. They have made big gains in the last 3-4 months, but we aren't there yet. Unfortunately, it's probably going to be the duration of this year, and I suppose if that continues, we'll have to take the summer to reassess where we're at and potentially other options. But I would guess the options are going to be similar anywhere in the area right now. But if we need to have greater conversation, we will. But
I do appreciate the conversations the continued conversations that you've had with them, and I know the city is working through this process at all, and I appreciate that, because I think we were very lucky to have the services that we've had.
Any other questions or comments for Dr. Leck regarding emotional social learning? Okay. Thank you. So then we will move on. We have nothing under old business, so we'll move into new business. We have nothing under activities. Moving into building and grounds, the preliminary facility needs report. Dr. Leck or Sally?
Yep, I will take care of that. So if you've seen this document before, but I want to just touch on a few different areas. If you look now, I will point out that this is estimated per March 1, so things change between March 1st and the end of the year, and we're always hesitant to provide fund balance estimates because things do shift so much, but I think we have to, from a planning standpoint, at least have an idea. And so what you see at the top, that $525,000, is an estimate of where our building fund is at. Moving down into the revenue, that's, again, what we're estimating for a 10 mil levy in our building fund for next year. The special assessment revenue of 1 mil interest, so that brings our total revenue to about $883,000 is what we're estimating. If you look at expenditures, I'm going to talk a little bit about my proposed summer maintenance, which is the last, but what we're a little bit more confident in, at least bringing that forward in terms of a proposal. Special assessment expenditures, we know those, they come from the city. Our property insurance of $30,000, debt financing, that's the middle school green space and Ernie Gates Field, that's $63,000. What I'm proposing is the summer projects for 2020, and that's approximately $740,000. So if you look at just summer projects, without all the other estimated expenditures, the special assessment, well, the insurance, debt financing, that's really already exceeds what we're projecting to bring in. And then essentially what that means is that $525,000 is you're going to deficit spend in building fund. And we've done that for the last few years. At some point, that's not going to be able to continue to happen. But it is something that until we get some of these projects, until we get to a point where we can't, I think we need to, because we know that there's priority projects that need to be considered. And so if you fund those summer 2020 maintenance projects that I am proposing, that would bring your estimated fund balance from $525,000 to $463,000. So again, deficit spending a pretty decent percentage of that building fund balance. If you go down further down in that page, if you look at the priority projects, those are the actual projects broken down by building that I am proposing, and I'll walk through those again in a bit. But that also includes our district-wide roofing needs. We assess and patch roofs all the time. So we've allocated about $33,000 for that. That usually doesn't trend down. That usually trends up from 33. I have eliminated the district-wide carpet and the district-wide safety updates from this budget simply because they couldn't be funded. We've usually had a $10,000 to $15,000 amount in those from year to year. I was just trying to look to make that work, so I eliminated those. We have annual inspections, maintenance services of about $12,000. We have property services, electrical, HVAC, plumbing needs. General building repairs, we have to have something in there. And that's similar to contingency, but I put a $10,000 contingency in there too to give us a little bit of cushion, but that brings your summer projects to that $740,000. So I just wanted to walk you through the different projects, and I'm not going to go through anything leveled as a 2, 3, or a 4 in these different buildings. I'm just going to focus on the priority projects. So there wasn't anything in Gusner, although we do know that heating, that boiler system is going to be coming in the near future, and that's probably going to be the only project we do in that year, because that'll be twice as much as the last 2 boiler projects, because there's that steam heat conversion, hot water conversion that we need to do at Gusner, and that doubles the expense. At Lincoln, that's where we're seeing replacing the boiler. If you look at, of course, we need to bid this. Last time we got a very good bid from Byrne Boiler for that project, and they did a nice job. That includes engineering fees, that $425,000. So that would be the project at Lincoln. At the high school, we need to replace a mixed air unit, and we're estimating about $50,000. Of course, those are estimates for us at this point. I have set aside $75,000 to continue that remodel of north to the transition house program. We know that we're going to have to support that program to some capacity. Hopefully, again, as we've talked before, Adam and Darby are working on how other ways that we can look to get that project without strictly building fund dollars. So what I've set aside is $75,000. There's nothing at the middle school this year. Louis L'Amour is nothing. At Roosevelt, there's some plumbing that needs to be replaced around the boiler area, and then replace the bell system intercom. At Roosevelt, and it's been this way for the last 5 years, we just haven't been able to fund something different. The intercom goes off intermittently, and so that's something that needs to be replaced. And so we're estimating that. That's close to what it cost at Louis L'Amour when we replaced that. There's some plumbing that needs replacement at Washington. It's a small cost. And then we need to continue to fund east bleacher section replacements at Ernie Gates. That's an annual expense. So those are the projects that make that $660,000 in the first page. And when you add up those other ancillary things like roofing, annual inspections, priority service, contingencies, and general building repairs, that comes to the $740 that you see listed in summer projects.
Thank you. Any questions or discussion for Dr. Leck? Bob?
The high school over the years, there hasn't been a lot of upkeep. When you said carpet, no money putting in there, I've just been thinking the high school, I think, is now about, 17, 18 years old? That carpet's got to be getting a little old and in need of repair, and that's going to be a huge project.
It's a good question. As we've done with the other buildings, we set aside a dollar amount. I think you have to recognize when you're talking classroom carpet, that is high traffic carpet. So if you go the cheap route, you're going to be replacing it a lot. And so we designate, a good high traffic carpet, and then we designate so much money a year, and we do as many classrooms as we can. And that's in the last 7 years. I think we've done a really good job of keeping up with carpet. It's just one of those things that I think right now priority needs to be in a couple different areas. So I think we've done the same with painting, where I think we've been able to keep that up really well with painting. So it isn't going to be a big chunk need. But you're right, it's something that's going to have to be considered as we move forward. It's just not as high a priority as something else.
Jason?
Back to the district tab, district-wide safety updates. Could you just elaborate on that, what that money was used for? Because I'm assuming we're not all of a sudden going to be out of compliance on things or whatever. I mean, could you just clarify why that was targeted as, not needing any funds?
Well, I would say it's not needing any funds, but again, the priorities of. It's been things like we're putting cameras in buildings we might have to replace. We've talked about key fob systems, greater security, more around the hardening of schools. What are we doing in those different facilities? When we went, and it was I think 8 years ago, going to a locked facility. Those types of things are what happen in that. But we have in the last couple of years put a $10,000 to $15,000 amount there to continue to update those areas. But again, I think it just comes down to the priorities of, we could put $15,000 in there, but that just means your ending fund balance goes down even more. And to me, it's about prioritizing. And when you have big projects like a heating system, that just means other projects are going to have to wait a little bit.
Any other questions or comments for Dr. Leck? Bob?
I think the discussion illustrates again, and we're thanks, Dr. Leck, for the work you've done on prioritizing. I'm sure that, because everything's a priority, and that we have to get some kind of a bond issue passed here so that we can update our buildings, because there's things here that, like Jason mentioned, safety issues, to see that not on there, and the what you pointed out too, that we could spend more, but then the fund balance goes down, and then you get to a point where, now what do we do? So we're going to have to get something, and I don't know what we can do to get the people in this community to realize that these aren't wants or wishes; these are needs. And anyway, good luck in the future on that. I hope we have something coming up in the not too distant future.
So one of the areas that I didn't include on here, we know we have a capital projects plan that's outlined needs over the last 10 years. I haven't even updated the priority projects to include what's been targeted in this year, because we know that we can't. There's other things that are, so what you're seeing in the priority projects isn't what's in our capital projects plan, because we can't. Those didn't make the cut. Because these other things are our priorities. And so when you look at the priority 2, priority 3, priority 4, a lot of those are existing capital projects. You add more to those and that only grows. And I think if you do take the opportunity to look through those, you know, it's particularly the priority 2s, those are all important areas, and they're just things we can't do. You know, we would love to, at Gustner, for example, replace the fire protection services there, but that isn't something that we can do. Now, that's a safe building. I don't mean to suggest that it isn't, and that, you know, those pass inspection, and that is a workable system, but that's something that you want to maintain and upgrade in those areas. So I think we're doing the best we can. We're doing exactly what we said we were going to do, which is prioritize the neediest projects and do the very, very best that we can. You know, I would draw everybody's attention to, you know, the end fund balance again. You know, these aren't bank accounts, they're contingency funds. And if we had a significant issue, a roof issue or a boiler project that absolutely had to happen, that's where that would come from. And when you fly so close to the sun, that's a pretty dangerous position to be in. And I think you're about as low as you would want that ending fund balance to be. Yeah, we're probably already past that, lower than you feel comfortable with, because you know how much these projects cost.
Yeah.
And these are high priority projects, and that's why we're prioritizing the things that we are: heating systems, roofing, because those are the things that you can't put off. So that's where we're at. You know, I feel like that's a reasonable place to be. I think that is the short-term plan, and we'll continue to short-term plan the best that we can, knowing that we don't quite have the funds to do a long-term plan. But that is where we are at, and I think it's a reasonable plan in the short term.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Moving on, we have nothing. Oh, I didn't know it needed a.
Sorry, I didn't put action.
I thought it was preliminary. We're coming to us later at a later date with bids, so.
Can I make one comment?
Yep.
Just a reminder with the preliminary is we do need to approve the summer projects so we can move forward with bidding and things of that nature. I meant to call it preliminary because we still need to get some feedback from principals on maybe special areas that they need. And again, something would have to reach a pretty high watermark, you know, to be in that priority projects list. But I also know that this is the process we use. I want to make sure that our individual buildings have some opportunities to share their specific needs. So we're making sure we're responsive to that too. But if anything would change on that list, it would come back for a final approval.
Thank you for that clarification. Can I have a motion to approve the preliminary facility needs report? Motion by Bob, second by Steve. Any further discussion? Heidi?
I think just by the nods around the table, I think the board is probably in favor of these projects, but again, our building fund balance is getting the lowest I've probably seen it. And so we and we know these things need to be done. And hopefully maybe, you know, something can change with our future planning and the community's wishes, because I think we're just trying to keep up here and not even touching what we need to be doing. And it's really hard to look forward and plan and even collaborate with other entities when we're just barely trying to keep up here. So I hope we can plan for some future things that will be favorable. So thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Now moving on into our agenda, we have nothing under curriculum and assessment, so we'll move into finance. We have the general fund balance that is there for our information. So then, are there any questions on the general fund balance? Then we will move into letter B. We have a budget revision. Sally?
Okay, out on the drive, I noticed the budget revision, there is a detail, which is all the detail that I do, but there should have been another document. I'll pass out the summary page. What you looked at is all the stuff that I have to do, which I wanted to present to the board and show that. But as we're talking about federal programs, as Dr. Luck mentioned earlier, the Step 2 curriculum. So as we plan, we try to, in March, April, and May, plan for next year. And then we have to submit our federal programs, our consolidated app, on August 25th. And obviously, things can change. Just as Dr. Luck said earlier, you know, the school resource officer, which was part of the Title IV, we're not using those funds. So then we come up with a different plan and get approval. Those budget revisions are submitted to DPI for approval. And by federal guidelines, the budget has to match, you know, what we're doing in the specific categories. So that is what this request is for. It is not, you know, the Striving Readers Literacy Grant is just, I think they changed some things on Dr. Luck. It's just getting things, it's not increasing the budget or anything, it's just putting things in the right category where they're being spent. And the same thing with Title I. There was an equipment budget that needed to be moved in the right area. And Title II, some things we did some training for Darby and Mr. Heinert and Mr. Delzer. You know, so we had to budget, you know, move some things around to get it in the right category. And like we talked about earlier, Dr. Luck talked about earlier, the Title IV budget, it's, you know, in a different category to purchase that Step 2, you know, rather than the school resource officers. So all of those are just moving things into the right category and adding, of course, to the budget. I don't remember what board meeting it was, but approval of the music education grant. So we are adding that to our budget. So the only increase to the budget is that music grant, the 13 on the expense side and the revenue side. So it's a wash. There is a slight adjustment in the revenue budget to match the Striving Readers Grant. The original memo, whatever, $55. So there's an increase of $55 plus the music grant to the revenue budget. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. Does anybody have any questions?
Any questions for Sally? Okay. All those in favor of approving the budget revision say, oh, I'm sorry, I need a motion first. Can I have a motion to approve the budget revisions? Motion by Heidi, second by Jason. Any further discussion? Dr. Leck?
I just want to reiterate what Sally had stated, just so everybody's clear, that the music education grant, which you see as a addition, it's a flow-through. So, you know, that is, we aren't talking dollar increases, we're just talking shifting from an accounting standpoint.
Thank you for that clarification. Any additional discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on to our monthly financial report, can I have a motion to approve the monthly financial report? Motion by Melissa. Second by Steve. Any discussions? Dr. Leck?
Maybe just a comment, you know, we did have a finance task force meeting before this, and so we'll provide a report minutes to that for our next meeting or at one of our March meetings, and there are some conversations and recommendations that are coming from there related to some finance areas, particularly ending fund balance targets. So we'll look for something in March regarding those items too. So not specifically to this report, but it does connect.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on in our agenda, we have under personnel, can I have a motion to approve the resignation of Shelley Mack, Food Service Director, at the conclusion of the 2019-2020 school year on June 19th, 2020? Heidi?
So moved, and we thank her for all her years of service, and she's done a great job of keeping bringing in fresh foods for our students and keeping that that's not an easy budget to work with either, and she's done a great job doing that. So we appreciate her service. Thank you.
And the co-op agreements that she's done to keep our costs down, yes. Can I have a second? Second by Jason. Any other discussion? Diane?
Just wanted to thank her for her service, as Heidi said, and just with great sadness that I see this resignation. She is going to have some very big shoes to fill. I know we can do it, but we will certainly miss her.
All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We have the superintendent evaluation timeline, and I do thank all of my board members for coordinating with Amy to get all of your evaluations in. So we will be under the timeline per Century Code. Moving on then into policy and procedure, can I have a motion to rescind BFA School Board District Administrator Relation Policy and to approve the first reading in the BFA Board Superintendent Relation Policy? Motion by Melissa. Second by Steve. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Can I have a motion to approve the first reading of the BFB Board Staff Communications Policy? Motion by Bob, second by Melissa. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Can I have a motion to approve the first reading of the BGA Board Communications with the Public Policy? Motion by Melissa, second by Steve. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Moving on in our agenda to tuition, can I have a motion to approve the tuition agreement for an 8th grade Jamestown student to attend Medina Public School for the 2019-2020 school year? Motion by Melissa. Second by Bob. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Under other, moving on, under other, we have the election timeline. Sally, would you like to review that for us, please?
The election, we've talked about it, the election on June 9th, 3 city positions, Roger Hout, Diane Hansen, and Jennifer Schmidt are up for re-election. Steve Veldkamp, the rural. The election will be held on June 9th. And the packets are available in the central office and also on our webpage. On March 7th, some of this information is adding deadlines for us publishing. We will publish that in the Jamestown Sun. April 6th at 4 o'clock, that's the deadline to file your intent with myself as far as applications to apply to become on the ballot for the election. And then April 8th, there will be a meeting in the central office to draw names out of a hat for name placement or ballot placement where your name goes. The rest of it is listing deadlines that we need to follow as far as on June 15th, the school board will declare the results of election, and there's also some deadlines for notice of election to the Jamestown Sun. And again, June 9th is the actual school board election, which is combined with the city and the county.
Thank you. Are there any questions related to that? Are there any items for the future agendas? Please feel free to email myself and Dr. Leck if you have anything that you would like to see on any future meetings. So our upcoming scheduled meetings, we have our next regular school board meeting on Monday, March 2nd, here at the Thompson Community Room at the middle school at 5:15. And please right-click on your adjournment to let us know how we did this evening. And Heidi.
The SCUC also has a meeting scheduled February 26th at 11:30 at the Country Kitchen / Days Inn in Castleton. If anyone has anything for me to take to that meeting, let me know, please.
Thank you for that. Any other discussion? With that, the meeting is adjourned.